This is actually insane, as an NHL insider links the Edmonton Oilers to a star goaltender right before the trade deadline. How big of an impact will he have on the Edmonton Oilers heading into the playoffs, and what will they have to give up to get this guy? We're going to break it all down for you guys coming up on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say that 84% of you guys watching this video right now aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up on the latest NHL news, especially with the trade deadline coming up this week, we'll have you posted on everything that's happening around the NHL. But Darius, with that said, we got to jump into this report from Nick Kyprios saying that the Edmonton Oilers, among several teams, are interested in trading for St. Louis Blues goaltender Jordan Binnington. Well, dare I say, Four Nations face-off could be MVP for Canada champion Jordan Binnington, and a lot of Oilers fans are fired up about this because we know how clutch Binnington is, and hearing that the Oilers are potentially going to get him going into a playoff run where they want to get back to the Stanley Cup final and win it this year, it is huge. They do also say in this report that St. Louis is going to be asking for a lot in return, because obviously this guy helped lead the team to the 2019 Stanley Cup for that team. And if we just take a look at how he's been playing this year, as I alluded to in the Four Nations face-off, this guy was unstoppable in that final game. He was making saves that a lot of goaltenders in the NHL would not make, and his regular season numbers have been down, yes, but St. Louis Blues, they've kind of been there and not there all season. They've been in the mix, they've dropped out of the mix, they've been up and down this leaderboard all season long. He has an 18-20 record right now with an .899 save percentage, but as we know from Binnington, when he comes clutch, when it matters the most. And I think, Darius, when you're looking at Jordan Binnington, this guy is the perfect missing piece for this team.
Yeah, I think that by all accounts, everything we've heard the last little while, it seems like the Oilers are interested in goaltenders, to acquire a goaltender at this year's trade deadline, because, Binnington, for example, has something that you can't teach, and we've seen it time and time again at this point, and that is the clutch gene. He did it in junior in Game 7 to win the OHL championship. He did it in Game 7 in the NHL with the St. Louis Blues to win the Stanley Cup, and then he did it at the Four Nations face-off. I mean, Canada had no business winning that game with some of the chances that U.S. had, and they did. And, the goaltender's part of your team, so that's that, right? So he has that clutch gene, and we know he comes up big when it matters. So I think this would be a great ad for the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, there's a couple of goaltenders out there that probably could do the job as well. But when you look at Stuart Skinner, he's only 26, probably, coming into his prime at this point. But when you look at the Oilers window and what they did last year and what's going to happen with Connor McDavid and his new contract, they have to try to win now, this year, or maybe next year, right? Their window is very short, I think, at this point to really, really go for it. So, yes, they can win a Stanley Cup down the road, absolutely, but I think that they're in a window right now, definitely. So, I think acquiring a goaltender like Jordan Binnington with the clutch gene, all of that, I think it would make a world of a difference for the Oilers, because, yes, do they have holes through their lineup? Absolutely. Do they have them on the forward position? Yes. Defense? Yes. But if you have a good goaltender like this that can come up clutch in those moments, it kind of hides those problems a little bit, and maybe you can go and win a Stanley Cup for yourself. So it's going to be interesting. I think Connor McDavid would probably like a move like this, and they can make it work as well.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt about it. One point I did want to make here before we get into the contract and how they're going to get this guy is we see a lot of teams adapting the two tandem styles. So I don't think bringing in Binnington means Stuart Skinner's going out. I think that we could see this team rock a two tandem over the next 2 seasons, which, as we look at Jordan Binnington's contract, that's how much is left on it. And I think having two solid goalies that can come in and work their butts off on any given night has worked for teams like the Boston Bruins last season and is working for teams currently. And I think the Edmonton Oilers know that, and I think they know that they need that on their team to be successful, because Stuart Skinner right now, like, God love Calvin Picard, but he's not competition for Stuart Skinner right now. But if you bring in Binner, he is competition for Stuart Skinner, which is going to make Stuart Skinner want this more and be more hungry to be a better goaltender. I think it's good for Skinner because he's only 26, so if he has that competition there, it's only going to elevate his game, and it's going to elevate Binnington's game. He's in the prime of his career right now. They're both going to be wanting to get the most starts, so I think that competition side of it is good for the team as well. But then you also have two great goaltenders that you can rely on when it matters and you need to win a game. But as you see here, Jordan Binnington is on a $6 million contract for the next 2 seasons, which is pretty good. I think if you look at Edmonton's cap hit right now going into the deadline, they're around 5.1 million. So they only really need to move around 800K to make this trade work, which is very doable in my opinion. They could even maybe get retained to give up a little bit more. I don't see that as an option. I think they take on this cap in its full entirety, but I do think that this trade needs to happen for the Edmonton Oilers. And how will they do that? It is by giving up the draft picks. If you look in the bottom right of this screenshot, they have a lot of draft picks. They have 2 firsts over the next 2 years. Their one for this year is gone, but they also have a lot of mid-round picks that they can fork up as well. But one thing that I want to bring up before I throw it back to you, Darius, is they have a lot of great prospects, whether it's in the OHL, wherever they are right now, that it looks like one of these people on this top 6 list could be on the other side of this trade going to St. Louis.
Yeah, I would imagine that if the Oilers are going to get this done, like you mentioned, they would want to, St. Louis not to retain any salary cap or any of the cap hit, I should say, because they're going to have to put in a sweetener into this deal, which could be Matt Savoy, who looks pretty good. And he was just called up and obviously putting up a couple points. So I think that could be a mistake to a degree, right? Like if you were to have St. Louis retain some salary because, he's only signed for a couple more years at this point. It would take him to 33, his contract. So I wouldn't retain any salary. I would try to move out a piece to kind of make that work so you wouldn't have to do that and then kind of figure out the salary cap after that. I mean, the salary cap's going up a lot season after season, every summer after this, like quite a bit, like almost $10 million every single summer. So you can definitely make it work. And one thing that you brought up too, no disrespect to Calvin Pickard at all, right? But I'm not sure what Jeff Skinner, or not Jeff Skinner, another guy on the team, but Stuart Skinner can pick up from that player. He can pick up way more from Jordan Binnington. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's played in the final of the Four Nations, all this stuff, right? One thing that's also, if you watch Stuart Skinner, kind of plagued him in his NHL career is his lateral movement. And something that Jordan Binnington does not shy away from is lateral movement. That's for sure. All over the ice, flailing, as you see in those big games. So I think that he can learn a lot from this goaltender. I think that the Oilers can make it happen if they move out a piece, which again, I think is the move instead of having St. Louis retain any type of salary because they're going to have to throw in a sweetener. But I think it's a good point. They're probably looking at the prospect pool. St. Louis, by everything we've heard at this year's deadline, because we've heard a lot of rumblings about Braden Shen, they are not going to move any of their players. They'll still hang on to all their players unless you're blowing them out of the water with a trade proposal. So, it looks like they might not move off this player. So the Oilers are going to have to make it worthwhile. So when you look at the prospect pool, there's nothing that really, I'm sure St. Louis would like a couple of the players, but nothing jumps off the page quite as much as Matt Savoy.
Yeah, and something I've been very vocal about on this channel is teams going all in. I mean, we're at the deadline now coming this Friday, and you really need to make a decision if you are Stan Bowman or just any GM in the NHL in general saying, are we going to go for the cup this year? Are we going to be avid buyers? Are we going to overpay a little bit to make our team a lot better? And if I'm Stan, I make this trade. I think Matt Savoy, a great prospect. You'd hate to see him go for the future of your team, but if you give him up for a chance to win a Stanley Cup, I think you do it here. I think, yes, he will be good in St. Louis. He's going to be a great prospect, but bringing in a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, a Four Nations Cup winner this season, we know how hot this guy is right now. I think you have to do it at this point. Like you said, he's a great mentor for Stuart Skinner, a guy who's entering his prime of his career and good competition for both. So I really like this trade, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, Oilers fans. Are you bringing in Binnington here? Are you giving up a guy like Matt Savoy for him? Let us know down below. We'd love to hear from you guys. But as always, I've been your host, KC, alongside my co-host, Darius. We'll catch you in the next one.